Today we're joined by Alex. Alex has founded a bunch of different and important things, one of them Bliss, and that's what we should talk the most about today. But Alex, before going there, you're an
You say
incredible.
Alex.
Yeah, I'm saying Alex. Is that not all
It's
right?
fine.
You said Alex when we said hi to each
It's
other.
very American, Alex.
Would you
But
say
usually
Alex?
it's Alexander. Well, is Alexandre.
Alexandre,
Okay,
yes, I
good.
love it.
Okay.
Nah,
Okay.
I've listened to a lot of semi-French audiobooks by the author Alexandre Dumas. So for that reason, I've heard that name many times. um, so Alex, welcome to the podcast. Let's talk first about your journey into both philanthropy as a founder, as also, of course, now a VC. Tell me a bit about your journey, how you got into it.
I'm first an entrepreneur. That's how I did start everything. So I was 17 and I started my first venture. It's that simple. So no, is that not that simple? I was hoping it will be simple. It is super hard. But that's what I started. I started because I needed money. So that's the start of everything. I said I need money, and I love freedom. So those two combined, I said let's try something out, and it was entrepreneurship. So it doesn't bring freedom, to be honest. And if you are successful, I'm not saying lucky because it's not about luck. It's really about work. But then maybe you can get money, but no freedom.
Well, I guess there are many interpretations of freedom, and there are many paths to it. Tell me, Alex, or
So
Alexandre.
we should talk about freedom then for
Yeah,
20 minutes.
let's stay on freedom. I think freedom is very important. First, define freedom to you, then.
So you said so many ways of. For me, at 17 is different. 17, 25 or 40 years old. At 17, it was I don't want to have a boss. That was my
The key one.
yeah, the key one. There's no boss to me. Then after, for sure, it's very different. 10 or 15 years ago. And when you understand that you need to find clients, you understand they have no freedom. It's because there is no free lunch. Nothing is easy, and you need to work hard because there is no other way to get what you want. But at 17, I was hoping that just because I had a great idea, people will come and will clap and said, "No, I want your product," and it's not how it works.
Would you say you have always loved the grind, and for that reason, it also worked for you to be an entrepreneur, or was it that pursuit of freedom that even though you saw it disappear a bit out there in the horizon, you still stuck to it?
Yeah, it's uh, grinding is working as it's not hoping, but I didn't see the same way at 17 or even 20. I think that my second business or my first real tech startup, I was 21, and I did realize that if you really want to have clients, it was one of the first web agencies in Europe, and I was saying to people around me is just you need to switch to the internet. It's internet is the future, and I was again hoping that everyone will say, "Oh yes, he's right." I will just come and I will ask him to build a website for me and everything, and no one came, no one. And then I realized if I really want to pay the bills, if I really want to be able to pay my team, I will have to do something. And then it's grinding, is calling people, reaching out to other people, getting so many no thank yous, so many. And sometimes once in a while, someone says, "Oh, yeah, why not doing something with you?" But when you learn this at 20 ish, then you know, how- you know how to do it. There is no way. And that's what I'm always saying to entrepreneurs, there's no way you can succeed. There's no way you can succeed without hard work. On planet Earth, I'd never, and it's interesting. And like you, Andreas, we are meeting so many entrepreneurs and successful ones. When you are very direct with them, and when you start saying no bullshit with me, tell me the truth, they will always tell you ton of work and sacrifices. So it's always the same. Are you okay? Are you fine? Making huge sacrifices to achieve your goals, and that's it's if it could be a no go, it could be a false start, but that's the important question. So this freedom, to me, was a dream at 17. I need to realize at 21 that's, it will be no freedom, it will be sacrifices.
On the other hand, you can also argue that, or at least that's very much how I think about it, that freedom is the ability and capacity to pursue what you think is important and what energizes you. And I think that in the end, that is what you have done. And you have, even after having become massively successful as an entrepreneur, made the money you need to get all the freedom that you set out to get in the beginning, you've kept at the grinding wheel. Talk a bit about that decision and why you've not stepped away and rested on your laurels.
Yeah. So I love what you just said, but I'm not sure if you would have said the same thing when you were in college. Maybe, and I should ask your wife.
I doubt.
Because it is normal because you you have a different view or vision. What is still important is what will drive you. And I know that you're driven by something more important than just make money or backing the right entrepreneurs. And the podcast is part of it. You want to showcase successes, you want to talk, you want to go deep. And that's the point for all of us. Why we do what we do. And I'm not saying that you need to know this when you're 15 or 25. It's fine. But at some point, you need to do it. And for me, it was clear. I need to have enough to protect the ones I love. And I know that at some point, I need to do something useful, let's say, at the very least, for other people. That was my, my North Star. So after, when you are saying this, what does it mean? How can you use technology to do this? How can you use finance to do this? It's hard, but at least I knew where I want to land. So after you can crash landing a plane, but at least I knew pretty well where I want to land.
Tell me, Alexander, a bit about, because of course you're on the UVC podcast. Our main audience are founders and entrepreneurs, VCs, LPs, people who act in this space of tech, and many of them chasing what you have achieved. So tell me a bit about, because is the holy grail financial wealth and the ability to do what you want, or is it something else for you? And what would you say to all the people out there that are pursuing that dream?
Let's define the dream then. And I'm sure that your dream and like the dream of everyone in this place is different. And I hope so. I hope we have different dreams. And sometimes you call it a dream, maybe it is just an ambition. Uh, for me, having money is not a dream per se. I hope that for no one there's a dream, but it was an ambition. It was a goal. It was something I need to get to pursue other dreams. That's where I was. But I did understand quickly and early that I was a good entrepreneur. Why? Because I was able to say to myself that I knew nothing. And that's a good start. You're meeting a lot of entrepreneurs. Sometimes you say, oh, you already know everything. So I'm not sure I can really help you. I think I love the entrepreneurs when they tell me, I don't know. I'm asking you questions, you answer, I don't know. I love that people can say this. And every time I start a business, and I've started 7 different businesses, every time I'm starting from zero, saying, you know what, I don't know. So I will spend time with people. Those people will know better than me. And then I'm sitting down and I'm asking questions. Sometimes dumb questions, maybe, but it's the start. And that's, I think, the other reason. I think that the other reason why I've been successful over and over, during those different startup, because hard work with just not knowing, and those two together, I think it's a great tango, just playing dancing together. But you need to accept this. And most of the time when we are 25, let's say 25, it's hard to say you don't know because people will judge you, people will look at you, or even entrepreneurs saying to an investor that you don't know. It's not maybe the best way to start a conversation with someone who will certainly put some money in your business at some point. Still, to me, it was always the same. Just I need to start something, and I need to better know because at the start I don't have enough knowledge, um, and then after it's implementation. Then the minute you do the good market research, Andreas, and that's everything. The market research to me is so important, so key at the start of the business. Then after is you go and you go deep, you go fast, you implement. But if you try to implement something, if you are not well balanced at the start, it will fail.
Tell me, Alexander, a bit about the decision to become a VC, so to say, found Blisce, which is your VC firm, but also contrast the experience of doing that with the experience of being a founder of an operational business, so to say, operator business.
No, great questions. Thank you. So there's two questions there. The first, it was not a VC fund first. It was my family office. So if you 10 years ago, so I was living in New York, made good money, selling, not running those tech startups, but selling those tech startups. And then I started my family office, and then we started investing in a few good startups. And then families came over, other families, other entrepreneurs saying, you have access to those startups. Can we invest alongside you? And we started doing SPVs. So we started doing special vehicles, and we said, no, I will invest, come with me, and we'll invest as a group. That's the start. Why it worked well? Because I built everything for my own family. So I said to myself, I will never do early stages, not because I don't like entrepreneurship, but because I know it's almost impossible to succeed, almost impossible. Um, maybe if you grow up maybe in San Francisco, maybe in New York, if you really want to start from zero, otherwise the likelihood to be successful is close to zero. So that for me is not for me. Then the pre-IPO hype can work, and we saw this in the last 10 years. Sometimes it worked very well, but it's harder sometimes. So I said to myself, if I want to protect my money, it's between Series A's and Series B's. So businesses making five, 7, 10, $20 million of revenues, um, wonderful trajectory, being more in more than one country, sometimes a region, want to be global. That was the ambition. And starting, and we talk about this because I know it's important, for you as well. How how do we think those technologies will impact the world? How do we think those businesses will really be for good? How can we leverage technology for something positive? And and said, oh, let's put everything together. And we start having more and more families coming over. And a few years after, said, let's structure a fund. Why we did structure a fund? Because everything we were doing before were through secondary deals. So it was more, oh, as a CEO, I will buy out some shares from you. We'll do a tender for the employees. We'll do stuff where we have less connection with the business, where it start after. And we said we want to have board seats. We want to be more active, and that's why 6 years ago we said let's do deals and we lead those deals. So what police does, we lead and co-lead everything we do. We have board seats or observer seats. We do Series A's and Series B's. We do 50% of what we do in the US, 50% in Western Europe. And we want to understand and we want to back those entrepreneurs. We would definitely reshape industries. We love them, but we want to understand how those industries will be reshaped, in a good way. That's how we see stuff. And businesses like Too Good To Go that you know very well, you know,
As being Danish, I
yes,
know
there's one of your top success in Denmark. That's the kind of business we love doing. So that's to answer this question of why and how we did start everything. And we grew and we grew and we got more families coming over. And we're not KKR by any means, but now we have more than $600 million under management. So it's real.
tell me,
Yeah, go
tell
ahead.
me, because you come from a family office background, which is very important for people to understand a bit how a family office thinks. And obviously, you come with a lot of credibility because you are a family office yourself, so there's a lot of resonance there already. But where we're seeing a lot of both founders and VCs struggling today in impact in the people that are trying to do good is that they're realizing that the green premium, it's not enough to talk about good, big, hairy goals anymore. You got to show a much clearer value proposition.
So it's interesting you're asking the question. The first thing I told my team years and years ago, I said, we can talk about impact, you can talk about B Corp, you can talk about ESG, you can talk about um, business for good. But there's one thing that we need to achieve if we want this to be at scale. You need to outperform other funds. If you come and you say, oh, we do good, but we do 6% year over year, and we underperform other funds, people will tell you, thank you, great work, but not for us. Or it will still be a small pocket somewhere. Since day one, Andreas, since day one, we outperform others. We're top decile of every fund or every single strategy we are doing. We are able to back the real strong entrepreneurs. You mentioned the Too Good to Go of the world, the Spotify of the world. We've been able to be part of some of those conversations in primary deals and secondary deals. We have been part of this ecosystem, but all the time we want to put together great returns with this ambition to leverage technology for good.
Tell me,
But you need numbers. I agree with you. You need facts.
trying to elucidate this more for people, because I think this is a narrative question, right? In the end, oftentimes at least, the good businesses do what the businesses have always done, or the good investors do what the investors have always done and have been wanting to do. It's more about how do you talk about this. And we spoke about Pale Blue Dot just before, good friends of both of us, and where they have been very strong in their communication about what they do when it comes to impact is saying, we are a generalist fund that happens to believe that the biggest opportunity in the world is fixing the climate, and for that reason we tend to do a lot of climate deals. But they also come from backgrounds of not having necessarily only done climate and impact before, so they have a very strong credibility in the normal tech scene as well. Some might also say that you've invested in, of course, Too Good to Go and Headspace and others that are closer to what you would call pure impact. You've also invested in Spotify. And Spotify, I guess, is something where some would say, well, what good impact is that? And others would say, well, it completely disrupted the music industry, and the whole point was to democratize access and actually allow people to become musicians, get freedom, if we go back to your first statement as a musician. So could you talk a bit about this fluid definition of impact and the importance of being able to navigate that?
It's really hard because if we are asking today the 20 people you'll be meeting the definition of impact, I'm sure you get 20 different definitions. And it's hard. So there's no one 100% agree with you, because I got this question from people said, and Spotify, what do you think? How you define Spotify is not medtech, food tech, is just another platform. So yeah, to your point, is before, you need to remember 15 years ago, before Spotify, um, only rich people were able to have access. They have to pay 99 cents on iTunes. That's the way, and for a lot of people, and you said it, the music was not accessible. And so yes, after, do we think this it's good for the planet and all the servers? But then it's an endless conversation where you will always find something not positive enough for you. That's why when we do our IC, so when we do our investment committee, we go deep. But we go deep with a dogma, because the worst thing on earth is having people with dogma saying, "Oh, you need to cross every single, no."
Yeah, it's a fact checking box.
Yes,
It's
and
a
it's fine. You have to tick those boxes, but the issue at the end is the definition itself of impact. That's why I've never told you that I'm an impact fund. Yes, we've been the first B Corp venture fund in Europe. Yes, we care about where we put the money. Yes, the entrepreneurs who are backing are so driven by technology and something way more important than themselves, something positive for the planet, for the community. But at the end of the day, what is important to us is understanding when we invest, why this positiveness or the impact, those values are backed in. What we have realized is when it's not backed in, those entrepreneurs, it will be hard for them to change because they need to survive most of the time. So it's hard to do something and adding on the top of it impact or something. Either it's part of your business. So to go is easy. It's a food waste. So the business itself is about just doing something positive.
Yeah.
It could be harder otherwise.
Yeah. Tell me, I want to ask you something because you've recently moved back to Europe, and part of that is, of course, because you are European by heart. You have strong European values, and and you said, as you said yourself, I want my kids to grow up here. I want them to experience Europe and be part of Europe. I'd love to ask you a question that I think is, again, on the impact angle, so to say, confounding to many, which is trying to understand what's happening in the US, but from the vantage point of a European. So maybe you could, because you've lived 10 years in New York, you're very plugged into that scene, of course. So could you talk a bit about what you're seeing in the States, how you translate to a European audience of founders and investors of what is going on in this space now?
Stuff that you know well. Entrepreneurship is everywhere in the US. They have even the college just doing entrepreneurship called Babson College. It's just about entrepreneurship. So it's talking earlier about backed in. It's backed in. You are in the US. You will start something at some point. I'm not sure when, in a year, in 2 months, but you will start. So it's part of their mindset. Something important that we don't have here is being okay with failures. You know this. As soon as you fail somewhere in Europe, even 25 years after, we'll say, "Oh, Andreas, I remember you 25 years ago. It's okay." Even if you have 25 different successes since then, the people will just remind us. So it's this kind of mindset. I think it's changing, but we're still, and I think we shouldn't fight against the U.S. I love the U.S. obviously because my kids grew up there, and I've spent so many years there. And the reason why I want my kids or want the family to come back with my wife because we love those two cultures, and I think it's important to us for our family to understand those two different cultures. Having said this, I do feel that tech entrepreneurs, European tech entrepreneurs, will always have a dream to succeed in the US. And whatever we can say, we can put any president in the US, you can do, whatever you want. The US will still be the US because we all grew up, if you grew up in Denmark, you still have the US, the movies and the rock stars and everything. So there's a condition, and that's what we see. And the market in the US is so big, massive, that if you are an entrepreneur, if you tell me you don't want to succeed in the US, you don't think the US is the grail, I do think you are bullshitting me. And it's normal. When my fourth startup, I remember, was it was in the mobile space. It was one of the top one in Europe. I said to myself, I can do the best job in Europe. If I really want to be number one in the world, I need to be number one in the US. That's the period.
Tell me, Alex, then a bit, and I want to go back on the impact point because the European mindset on impacts is very different from the US. And we are seeing, on the one hand, we're seeing definitely people saying that we have a chance now, an opportunity in Europe because the US is falling behind on this agenda. And then there are others that come out on the other end of the spectrum and saying, no, no, we got to get off this train because like the people that are moving the train are not going this direction. So could you talk a bit about where you come down on that and the movements that you're seeing and where you think that the smart people should position themselves?
So the good thing is entrepreneurs, I think they they will do what they want to do. If you talk to all those entrepreneurs in every single colleges around the world, 50% of them, they want to be entrepreneurs. It's scary and beautiful in the same time, because most of them, it will be hard. Still, I see more and more of those entrepreneurs taking action and trying to define. They want to build something big. They want to be successful, but to them, Instagram or TikTok is maybe not, the perfect ideal just startup. So they want to be successful. They want to make money. They want to have clients. But at the very start, it's say I can position myself in building something will make total sense for the community. And this is not changing. In the US, I feel the same. I think there's a direction taken by the administration, yes, but entrepreneurs, they are building stuff for the next 10 years. So they won't stop, or because they will build something. And yes, they're listening to the news, they're watching stuff coming up, but it's harder on the institution side. So yes,
Yeah, and I was actually about to ask you exactly that and put you a bit on the spot there because, yes, what entrepreneurs will do, I think you're absolutely right. Nothing can stop an entrepreneur, and that's the type of founder that you need to build these large companies. However, you're investing in Series A, Series B stages primarily. That is one of the places where finance risk is a big one, and the ability to acquire larger customers also starting to be a big one. And that is where what is happening in the macroeconomic space is very important. Could you talk a bit about when you look at and now I'm calling it an impact startup, but a startup that is motivated by doing good? Could you talk a bit about how you're looking at the risk landscape in the climate space and the more do good oriented businesses?
So I think it's when you are Series A's and B's, those startups really have revenues, so it's easier. I think where it's hard is when you have your business plan with you, you are pre-seed, and you try to convince the world that your technology will change the world. This is hard, as well it would be hard, to be honest. You know this. But now, if you do something in the climate world where it's hard to understand, you need to have two PhDs with you to understand the business. Plus, it's something that will maybe make sense or will succeed in 15 years. That's really hard to raise money for those businesses. I think we are protected where we are because you will already see if you have been able to get the first clients. We have already seen if you were able to get the first money in. But it's very true that when you start early with this business plan, if you 5 years ago you were putting green, climate, ESG, impact of what else? What else? And so we have long list. The people were interested, but then you have two kind of investors: the families, and you can put the institutions. Or so that's where I think some can follow the others, some can just be super strict about what they want to achieve and how they want to achieve it. On both sides, you will always find people who really believe in something and they are not pushed by other people. They strongly believe that technology could be and should be a force of good. So that's what you need to find.
Yeah. Alexander, now let me ask you a final question before we close. And it's an entire topic of its own. I want to talk about tech sovereignty in Europe. You're obviously out of Paris, and we have Mistral, which I think is our strongest bet on AI sovereignty. So talk a bit about like both the political landscape for that, how you're acting in it yourself, and what you're seeing and whispering in people's ears.
No, and you find now money for it 5 or 7 or even 2 years ago, you were talking about defense, sovereignty. It's would have been super hard for most people to raise money.
Mhm.
Now you see this every other week. There is a fund just doing something more specific around this. So I'm happy. I'm happy for them. I'm happy for Europe. I'm just always a bit skeptical um, on the fact that we we should be careful not protecting us too much. because we always see this. It's impossible to live in a bubble. It's impossible. Um, our top engineers, how can we make them stay in Europe? This is a big question. How can we make those engineers staying and living their dreams here in Europe, not going to the US? How can we keep entrepreneurs here in this beautiful Europe and not going outside? So, and if they go outside, how will we keep their link between the fact that you're a Dan, you're a French, you're a Swede, or because that's the world I want to live in. I don't want to live in a world where we have borders everywhere, and even less with our friends from the US. So that's where I think where I am. Having said this, we see a few, you mentioned Mistral, you find a few others saying, you know what, our way of being successful will be really to spend most of the time and to offer something for Europe. Remember, we backed a great organization led by a super strong entrepreneur in Stockholm called Evrock. And they started saying it's very successful entrepreneurs coming from Sweden, made most of his career in the US. And I think 3 or 4 years ago, he said, I can keep running tech businesses in the US, but there's something coming in Europe and I need to be part of it. He said, there's one place where we're nowhere is hyperscaler. He said, we have to use, Azure, we need to use UW, Amazon Word Services. But if you are really in the defense business, if you are in the healthcare business in Europe, do you really want to think that at some point maybe someone in the US will be able to have access to your data, to have access to your information, to everything? So it's still
You
been
have, as
something.
an example, you have the German initiative that's entirely run, like the German in collaboration with SAP, that's entirely built on the Microsoft and OpenAI value system.
Yeah. So then how do we want to approach this? I'm not saying this is the only way, but to be honest, if you are, you know, healthcare, defense, everything is so critical in terms of data. We need to have something, in Europe, and that's what they start doing. So we back them, Blisce back them with EQT that you know very well, with Norxon that you know very well, with Giant Ventures, and we hope, and I'm sure other ideas like this will pop up. Already do exist, but we need to find a few winners. So you can mention Mistral. It's already I think a winner, but we need to understand why they will be European winners. Why we if it's data is important, we need to be careful with the data. That's why I understand why sovereignty will exist. On some other aspects, I think let's not be not too protective, to be honest.
Final question. Tell me a bit about where you come down, and this is a mission that's very close to my heart, on the role of investors and successful founders in policy and politics.
So so what do you want to where do you want to land?
Well, I don't. Well, I
Do you want to become prime minister of Denmark? That's
no,
what you want.
definitely not.
Mete, be careful.
Yeah, it's better be careful. No, what I'm so my high horse is that the one force that is truly impacting the world today is technology. And the people that are spending all their time building and investing and trying to understand the future are investors and founders in tech. And for that reason, I think that it is an imperative for people, the successful people in this space, to get involved in that debate, both publicly, but also of course, behind the scenes or in the more closed fora. But I do think that in the public discourse, we have a very big role to play. And I don't feel that we're doing enough, especially in Europe. And that's also why I think we're seeing the narrative being written by our US counterparts, because we're leaving a vacuum of thought leadership when it comes to where will tech take us and what can we do with it.
So I share the same vision. I think we need to work better together, public market and private sector. So we need to work together because we'll be stronger. Sometimes it's hard because we sometimes speak different languages, literally, just it's hard to understand each other. But at the very least, is having conversations, not public conversations. And I'm spending a fair amount of my time with, you know, with policymakers and leaders. Is never ever just to take pictures. It's just let's talk. How do you want to achieve this? How can you do this? And on something not the same, but that's why 10 years ago I joined the Olympic Committee for Paris because I saw this wonderful event coming up, and I said to myself, maybe I can bring something to the beautiful debates, and then I joined them, and I became a board member there, and we spent time not only about technology, but something important. That's what you're fighting for is why leveraging, why those events, why those technology, why we do what we do. They should have something positive against it. Otherwise, it will be such a shame. And yes, if the entrepreneurs, even more than the investors, to be honest, but the entrepreneurs, if they can spend more time, but and we both know that they have no time because they are in this rush to succeed. So it's not easy. So it's very true. And back
That's
what you
why I
said about
think that
sacrifices, it's hard. Do you really want to spend time on policy when you have no time to spend with your family or you have not enough time with your friends? So how can you do everything?
that's why I push a bit on the investors because I think the
Because they have more
investors
time.
they honestly the investors have stepped back from an operator career. The good investor will typically have gone and done it, and you've won the stars on your shoulders, so to say. Now you're an investor, and I think that that's where you're then taking in a role in society where you are looking at macro trends. You are trying to live on a different layer, so to say, than someone grinding it out in a very hardcore day-to-day business. And that's why I feel that investors play a big role here. Let me just ask on that public part, because you said that you're having many conversations on the importance of these. And I do absolutely agree. Where I think, though, is that the problem is that the public discourse is not left open. Like it will, that vacuum will always be filled by someone. And if we as tech founders and tech investors don't go in there, we're going to see other actors go in there. One of them being incumbents, and one of them being private equity and their henchmen, so to say, and they are not aligned with us. And that's why I feel it's so important that we don't leave it up to the KKRs of the world, but we actually take it into the founder land
So
by joining in the public discourse.
yeah, I think it's what I have to say is the minute someone is taking time to fight for a cause and to do something for the community, I'm up
Beautiful.
for it. I think it's being selfish is more the norm than the exception, and is normal because we have so much stuff to do. So I'm with you. If everyone can do something, and we're talking about not always national debate it's local. Just work with your mayor, spend time with your district. So it's where stuff, you know, happens as well. So 100% with what you just said. Entrepreneurs and investors, they can bring something to the table, not about tax and please
Exactly.
remove this. That's not what we need here. Is we need to showcase that technology is something important to bring something to the world, and that's what's important. Let's not always talk about tax because that's what people see
Agree.
entrepreneurs and investors. Guys, you make a lot of money, and when you start talking, it's just less tax and rebates everything. So if everyone can see entrepreneurs in a different way, I think it will be positive for everyone.
And part of that, I do believe, is because we have ended up putting a lot of our policy power as investors with organizations that both represent VC and private equity. And I'm always like, why are we aligning with them? Like,
You don't like those P guys.
well,
They
uh,
have something to say, I'm sure.
yes, they have. No, I don't want to.
Child story,
I
something, a
think the big,
trauma there.
I think the big thing is just that it's just very different, and it's different people. Like every person that I've ever met in venture have said no to much bigger uh, uh, remuneration packages in private equity, and they said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm doing this because I believe in a better world. I believe in what we can do as tech investors
You're
and
only
founders.
meeting good people. I like it.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to get good people around me. Let me ask you a final point here, and it's just a bit about the Paris ecosystem. If you should say a few words, because you are based in Paris, I want to give you just a soapbox to get up on here. What's incredible about the Paris ecosystem today?
Yeah, we're super lucky to be in Paris, and then we see it in Paris. And hope is coming to Italy. It's not only Paris, let's say France, but we see and we hope it will go to other places in Europe because we need strong ecosystems across Europe. What I see when I started seeing in Italy, I'm super happy. It's always a mix. It's a mix between, again, the public system, and that's what we saw in Paris 10 years ago with BPI. You know, BPI is the French bank or innovation bank. We started putting more money and pushing more towards startups. Then we have a few entrepreneurs slash families that, oh, I made money. I want to help other entrepreneurs. And then you have everything suddenly putting together. And that's what we see and that's what we need elsewhere. We see that Berlin is a great scene. We see that Stockholm is a great scene. We see London. But that's what we need across Europe, across every single country. We need to see this. And back to what we said earlier, Andreas, we also need people to understand that they can achieve their dreams in their own country or in this beautiful Europe. That's what's missing, and that's what we need to help and pushing hard.
What a beautiful note to close on. Thank you, Alexander. Thank you so much for joining us today.
So thank you for your invitation.
Of course.